On May 24, 1940, near the Arc Canal in northern France, General Major Heinz Guderian stood atop a slight elevation, his binoculars focused on a location that would forever imprint itself on German military strategy. Through the early morning mist, he could make out the medieval walls and church steeples of Dunkirk, situated about 12 miles away. His 19th Panzer Corps, at the forefront of what was then Germany's most significant military triumph, awaited orders to deliver a decisive blow that would obliterate the British Expeditionary Force and potentially bring an end to the conflict in the West. However, an order arrived that turned victory into one of history's great what-ifs. The directive stated, "Halt immediately, do not cross the canal." Guderian later recalled in his memoir, Panzer Leader, that this command left him speechless. He referred to it as having a devastating impact on the war's future trajectory. Behind him lay a string of remarkable victories: the breakthrough at Sedan, the rapid advance towards the coast that encircled Allied forces, and an astonishing feat of reaching the English Channel in just 10 days. Approximately 400,000 Allied soldiers were trapped against the sea, seemingly at their mercy. Yet, at this critical juncture, with success within reach, Germany's war machine abruptly halted. This narrative recounts Dunkirk from a German perspective, not as a miraculous salvation, but as an unfinished victory and a missed opportunity that marked a psychological turning point in the entire conflict. It is told through the eyes of soldiers who watched in frustration as vessels carried away an army they had defeated, by accounts of panzer commanders ordered to stand firm while their prey escaped, and by reflections of veterans who spent years pondering what might have been. When German forces initiated Operation Gelb, case yellow, on May 10, 1940, they represented the pinnacle of revolutionary military thought. Army Group A, commanded by Generaloberst Gerd von Rundstedt, controlled the main striking force. Under his command were the 4th Army under Günther von Kluge, the 12th under Wilhelm List, and the 16th under Ernst Busch. However, the true cutting edge was Panzer Group Kleist, which housed the concentrated armor that would cut through France. The daring plan, conceived by General Lieutenant Erich von Manstein and endorsed by Hitler himself, called for an unexpected move. While Army Group B under Fedor von Bock advanced into Holland and Belgium in what appeared to be a repeat of the 1914 Schlieffen Plan, the real assault would come through the seemingly impenetrable Ardennes forest. Here, Guderian's 19th Panzer Corps achieved what many deemed impossible. Guderian led 3 formidable divisions: the 1st Panzer Division under Friedrich Kirchner, the 2nd Panzer Division commanded by Rudolf Fehl, and the 10th Panzer Division headed by Ferdinand Schall. Concurrently, General der Infanterie Hermann Hern's 15th Corps advanced with 2 additional formations: the 5th Panzer Division and the 7th Panzer Division, led by an ambitious general named Erwin Rommel. Within days, Rommel's division earned the moniker Ghost Division for its unexpected appearances on the battlefield. The breakthrough occurred with breathtaking speed. By May 13, Guderian's forces had crossed the Meuse River at Sedan following a devastating Luftwaffe bombardment conducted by Flieger Corps WWII under Wolfram von Richthofen, cousin of the legendary Red Baron. The French defenses crumbled under the coordinated assault of tanks, dive bombers, and motorized infantry. Hans von Luck, commanding a reconnaissance battalion in Rommel's 7th Panzer Division, later recounted in his memoir, Panzer Commander, that his unit reached the Meuse River in just 3 days, a pace even the Germans found astonishing. The secret to this remarkable speed lay not only in the tanks, but in an innovative approach to warfare. Forward-based Luftwaffe liaison officers, equipped with radios, could call in Stuka dive bomber strikes within 45 minutes. The screaming Ju-87s of St. G2 and St. G77, their sirens wailing, shattered enemy morale before the panzers arrived. This combination of psychological warfare and mechanical precision proved devastating. By May 20, an impossible feat had been achieved. Armored spearheads from the 2nd Panzer Division reached Noyelles-sur-Mer on the English Channel. In just 10 days, German forces had driven a corridor to the sea, effectively cutting the Allied armies in two. The rapid advance was so swift that even Hitler expressed disbelief at his headquarters. However, success brought its own challenges. Tank losses from mechanical breakdowns and combat mounted alarmingly. By May 21, some Panzer units reported being down to 50% strength. Supply lines were stretched dangerously thin across hundreds of miles. Infantry units had difficulty keeping up with the rapid advance of armored divisions. This changed when the Battle of Arras began. On May 21, Rommel's 7th Panzer Division encountered a British tank assault at Arras while moving confidently forward. The encounter was swift and devastating. According to Rommel's war diary, casualties amounted to 89 killed, 116 wounded, and 173 missing, a toll higher than what the division had sustained throughout its rapid advance so far. In this critical moment, Rommel personally supervised anti-tank gun placements and targeted enemy tanks. The psychological effect was palpable. German high command grew anxious over exposed flanks. Although the British attack was ultimately repelled, it left German forces questioning whether the panzers were too far ahead and potentially walking into a trap. By May 23, German troops had secured Boulogne and laid siege to Calais. The British Expeditionary Force, along with elements of the French First Army and Belgian Army, found themselves trapped in a shrinking pocket with their backs against the sea. At the German headquarters, optimism reigned. However, on the evening of May 23, 1940, Generaloberst Gerd von Rundstedt made a decision that would have significant historical repercussions. After receiving alarming reports from his panzer commanders about reduced tank strength and overstretched supply lines, coupled with concerns raised by the Arras attack, he issued an order to pause operations. The following day, Adolf Hitler arrived at Rundstedt's headquarters in Chalaisville, Messy-Passy. According to Generaloberst Franz Halder's diary entry dated May 24, 1940, the critical halt command was communicated at 12:42 p.m. At the Führer's directive, the attack northwest of Arras is confined to the general line Lens-Baton, Arras, Omer, and Gravelines. Halder expressed his irritation when he realized that troops were not permitted to cross the canal. Hitler was extremely anxious and reluctant to take any risks. Rundstedt had concerns about his flanks and desired infantry support. Recalling his wartime experiences in Flanders, Hitler feared that the marshy terrain around Dunkirk would be unsuitable for tank operations. The most influential argument, however, came over the phone from Hermann Göring. As Reichsmarschall, Göring assured Hitler that his Luftwaffe would obliterate the Dunkirk pocket through aerial bombardment. Why jeopardize valuable panzer units when the Air Force could handle the task? This decision had immediate repercussions on the battlefield. Guderian, commanding the 19th Panzer Corps near Dunkirk, was incensed. His 1st Panzer Division had already deployed bridging equipment across the canal, and some reconnaissance units had crossed it. Now they were ordered to withdraw and establish defensive positions. For 3 vital days, German troops stood idle as the evacuation commenced right before their eyes. Through binoculars, they observed an armada gathering offshore, consisting of destroyers, passenger ferries, fishing boats, and private yachts. Anything that could float was pressed into service for rescue operations. Diaries from frontline units reveal soldiers' frustration during this period. The engineers of the 2nd Panzer Division worked on May 25 to construct bridges over the canal system in preparation for what they believed would inevitably be an advance. Artillery units continued to conduct harassment fire against enemy positions near the beaches and port. Meanwhile, At the heart of Wehrmacht's striking force, its concentrated armor remained inactive. On the night of May 26, Hitler finally lifted the halt order. However, it still took another 16 hours for the units to restart their advance. By this time, the Allies had gained 4 crucial days to set up defenses and intensify Operation Dynamo. When German forces resumed their movement on May 27, they encountered organized resistance instead of the anticipated chaos. Hermann Göring's assurance to Hitler that his Luftwaffe would obliterate the Allied pocket turned out to be a significant miscalculation during World War II. The Luftwaffe appeared formidable with 2 Luftflotten, one commanded by General Field Marshal Albert Kesselring and another led by Hugo Sperl, along with Fliegerkorps WWII under Wolfram von Richthofen, which included Stuka dive bombers. In total, more than 300 bombers and over 550 fighters were prepared for action. May 27 marked the first full day of Operation Dynamo and saw the Luftwaffe's concerted effort to fulfill Göring's promise. German squadrons launched wave after wave of attacks from dawn until dusk. One notable incident occurred at Dunkirk harbor, where a fire broke out in an oil tank, generating thick black smoke visible for miles around. However, according to Fliegerkorps War Diary, RAF Fighter Command offered unexpected resistance. Spitfires and Hurricanes operating from southern England engaged German formations throughout the day. The Luftwaffe suffered 23 aircraft losses on that first day alone, including seasoned crews who were difficult to replace. The primary issue was fuel endurance. Messerschmitt Bf 109E fighters, based in Belgium, had only about 10 minutes of operational time over Dunkirk before needing to return due to fuel constraints. Similarly, the Stukas, which were so effective when protected by their escorts, became vulnerable targets for modern fighter planes once those escorts left them unsupported. Moreover, out of 9 evacuation days, only 2.5 offered favorable flying conditions. On May 28th, dense clouds and smoke from burning oil hindered visibility for targets. Kesselring complained to Göring about exhausted crews after 2 weeks of intense operations. The Luftwaffe's peak performance occurred on June 1st, when clear weather permitted maximum effort, resulting in the sinking of 4 destroyers along with other vessels. However, by that time, a significant portion of the British Expeditionary Force had already been evacuated. Despite conducting 1882 bombing and 1997 fighter missions, the Luftwaffe failed to halt the evacuation process. German pilot Joachim Müncherberg from Jagdgeschwader 26 flew numerous escort missions throughout the withdrawal period. His combat reports document 5 Spitfires claimed as victories, including 4 on May 31st alone, earning him the Iron Cross First Class. Even this ace recognized the intensity of British resistance and the difficulties faced while operating at maximum range. When German ground forces resumed their advance on May 27th, they encountered newly fortified defenses. The British had used the respite to establish a robust perimeter along the canal lines. French forces, particularly those in the First Army, began a desperate last stand that tied down crucial German divisions needed elsewhere. According to the German 18th Corps War Diary, the 56th Infantry Division advanced through flooded terrain towards the Dunkirk perimeter, suffering heavy casualties from well-prepared British positions. The division became combat ineffective and had to be withdrawn. Research by Robert Kershaw in Dunkirk 1940 reveals that there was virtually no coordinated plan for reducing the pocket. Units attacked independently without proper coordination. Only 5 out of 10 German divisions surrounding Dunkirk could operate effectively from dry ground due to flooding. The siege of Lille proved especially costly, with 7 German divisions becoming embroiled in a 4-day battle against 40,000 French defenders. Despite this, The garrison surrendered on May 31st, but their resistance had tied down forces that could have been decisive at Dunkirk. Colonel Wager, who led the German forces at Lille, observed in his post-operation report that the French resistance surpassed all initial projections. German artillery observers recorded remarkable scenes on the beaches. According to Wehrmacht records, long queues of soldiers stretched from the dunes into the water, maintaining order even while under fire. The variety of vessels was particularly noteworthy, ranging from Royal Navy destroyers and Thames pleasure steamers to fishing trawlers and private yachts. One divisional war diary noted that enemy troops displayed remarkable discipline during their evacuation efforts. Small boats continuously shuttled between the beach and larger ships, despite German artillery bombardment. The mobilization of civilian vessels was entirely unforeseen by German military planners. Colonel Ritter von Thoma, whose tanks were immobilized due to orders and terrain constraints, later testified that he could observe British rearguard units conducting textbook-style withdrawals through his field glasses. This professionalism among supposedly defeated troops contradicted German propaganda about the inferiority of democratic armies. Letters from German soldiers, preserved in the Bundesarchive, reveal a range of reactions to Dunkirk. Early optimism regarding an imminent British surrender gradually turned into uncertainty as Britain continued its fight. The sheer volume of abandoned equipment, 2472 guns, 84,427 vehicles, and 657,566 tons of supplies according to Wehrmacht tallies, appeared to confirm the effective destruction of the BEF as a fighting force. Yet, intelligence reports indicated growing unease among German troops. If defeated armies could evacuate successfully, what might defending forces accomplish? The psychological impact was particularly pronounced among units that had suffered unexpected casualties from British rearguard actions. The SS Totenkopf Division's massacre of British prisoners at La Perdue on May 27 and Wormhout on May 28 illustrated the breakdown in discipline when facing unexpectedly fierce resistance. These war crimes, documented during post-war trials, revealed the psychological strain experienced by inadequately trained units. Sunker Neitzel's analysis of German POW conversations, secretly recorded by British intelligence, highlights how profoundly Dunkirk impacted German military thought. Germans frequently described it as the missed opportunity to conclude the war in their favor. After World War II, military analysts in Germany pinpointed the Battle of Dunkirk as the moment when strategic initiative began to shift. Although Germany would continue to win battles, the chance for a swift victory had slipped away. From that point on, all future operations would be contested by Britain. Franz Halder's diary contains one of the most comprehensive critiques of the Halt order from his time. On May 24th, he recorded that Hitler was extremely anxious and hesitant to take risks. Halder strongly disagreed with the order, arguing that weather conditions were crucial for air support. In his post-war memoir, Panzer Leader, Heinz Guderian described the Halt order as having a profoundly negative impact on the war's trajectory. His resentment stemmed from the fact that he was within striking distance of Dunkirk when ordered to halt. German perspectives underwent significant changes over time. Initially supportive of the order due to tank losses and exposed flanks, they later claimed it was Hitler's sole decision, despite lack of contemporaneous evidence, thus attributing blame to the deceased leader in post-war narratives. Hermann Göring never openly admitted any mistake, but his Luftwaffe's failure undermined his reputation permanently. All assessments by the Luftwaffe highlighted significant challenges: extensive range limitations, reliance on favorable weather conditions, and unexpected effectiveness of the Royal Air Force, RAF. Kesselring and Richthofen's after-action reports stressed that their forces were fatigued after 2 weeks of intense fighting. The Luftwaffe suffered between 156 and 240 aircraft losses during the evacuation, a number that would have repercussions in the Battle of Britain. While much attention was given to Dunkirk's beaches, approximately 40,000 French soldiers conducted one of the war's most courageous defenses at Lille. For 4 days, they resisted 7 German divisions, including 3 armored units. German unit records indicate a grudging admiration for the tenacity of the French forces. General Wavel's troops endured heavy casualties in urban warfare, an environment for which they were ill-prepared. On May 31, when the garrison surrendered, German soldiers paid military honors as a rare gesture of genuine respect. Churchill later estimated that Lille's defense allowed an additional 100,000 evacuations to occur. German intelligence was frustrated with French defensive tactics around Dunkirk's perimeter. By effectively using flooding, French forces transformed approach areas into deadly traps for the enemy. The 68th Infantry Division successfully repelled German assaults even as the evacuation continued. Reports from Wehrmacht noted that French units maintained discipline despite being exposed on their flank after Belgium's surrender on May 28. German commanders had anticipated a collapse in French morale, but instead encountered increased determination among French troops. Upon entering Dunkirk after June 4, advancing German soldiers discovered an enormous amount of abandoned equipment. Quartermasters in Wehrmacht documented over 2,472 artillery pieces, 84,427 vehicles, and 657,566 tons of ammunition and supplies. Propaganda units filmed extensive footage of the captured materials. This substantial haul led to erroneous assumptions by German leadership that Britain was effectively disarmed. These observations influenced planning for Operation Sea Lion and contributed to underestimating British resilience. By May 24, German tank strength had been significantly diminished due to combat losses and mechanical failures. The reliability of Panzer III and IV tanks proved lower than expected during prolonged operations, with some divisions reporting only 50% operational capacity. This technical reality played a role in the decision to halt their advance. As Case Red was still planned against remaining French forces, preserving tank reserves became crucial. Every tank lost at Dunkirk would be unavailable for the push towards Paris. Wehrmacht intelligence had initially estimated that no more than 30,000 to 45,000 troops could potentially escape by sea. The withdrawal of more than 330,000 Allied soldiers was beyond what German planners had anticipated. Their doctrine focused on Kesselschlacht, or cauldron battles where encircled forces surrendered. The idea of such a massive maritime evacuation was unfamiliar to the Germans. The sudden involvement of civilian vessels, known as the little ships, caught them off guard. The Nazi high command fundamentally misunderstood Dunkirk's importance. On June 5th, Hitler issued a proclamation declaring that the British Expeditionary Force had been annihilated. Abandoned equipment appeared to support this claim. German plans for invading Britain assumed they would face demoralized and poorly equipped forces. Instead, the evacuated troops became the core of experienced units around which Britain rebuilt its army. The spirit that emerged from Dunkirk proved stronger than German projections. Hitler's headquarters at Felsenist near Bad Münstereifel was where the hold order originated. Staff officers later recounted Hitler's mood swings. Initial euphoria over the breakthrough followed by growing anxiety as panzers advanced rapidly. Holder documented Hitler's fear that their success might be too good to be true, suggesting a possible trap. This paranoia stemming from his experiences in World War I, influenced critical decisions. The hold order was issued directly by Hitler and bypassed regular military channels. Following the evacuation, headquarters received increasingly urgent reports about Allied escape attempts. Despite this, Hitler remained unconcerned, confident that Britain would soon seek peace terms. This strategic oversight would prove detrimental to Nazi Germany's ambitions. Joseph Goebbels faced the challenge of portraying the escape of hundreds of thousands as a victory. German media highlighted territorial gains and seized equipment, while downplaying the significance of the evacuation. The Völkischer Beobachter declared it the most devastating battle ever recorded. Official statements from their Wehrmacht reinforced this narrative. On June 5th, the announcement focused on captured prisoners and material without acknowledging those who escaped. This discrepancy created a rift between official propaganda and the first-hand experiences of frontline soldiers. Initially, the German public was unaware of the evacuation's true extent. However, as soldiers returned home on leave, they began to share stories about the successful escapes by Allied forces. Secret police reports from the summer of 1940 indicated rising public concern over continuing the war against Britain. The Luftwaffe's subsequent defeat in the Battle of Britain and the cancellation of Operation Sea Lion further fueled these suspicions. Dunkirk's failure to destroy the British Expeditionary Force, BAF, fundamentally altered German plans for invading Britain. Planners for Operation Sea Lion had to account for hundreds of thousands of experienced troops they mistakenly believed would be captured. Admiral Raeder argued that if Britain could evacuate its forces under enemy fire, it was also capable of preventing an invasion. The Luftwaffe's failure at Dunkirk raised doubts about the ability to achieve air superiority necessary for a successful invasion. Studies by Wehrmacht identified several issues exposed by Dunkirk, including Britain's mobilization of civilian resources, tenacious defense capabilities, and naval supremacy. These factors contributed to the eventual cancellation of Operation Sea Lion. The outcome of Dunkirk ensured that Germany would face a two-front war, which it had sought to avoid at all costs. By allowing Britain to remain in the conflict, Germany guaranteed future American involvement and sustained pressure from the Western Allies while fighting against the Soviet Union. During the war, American military analysts extensively studied the decision made at Dunkirk. Staff studies concluded that it marked a pivotal shift in strategic momentum. From then on, every campaign would involve British resistance and coalition-building efforts leading up to the eventual Allied invasion. In his memoir, Panzer Commander, Hans von Lux recounted how his reconnaissance battalion within the 7th Panzer Division spearheaded Rommel's advance through Belgium, covering 200 kilometers in just 3 days. Von Lux expressed frustration over being ordered to halt while observing the evacuation. He noted that it was incomprehensible why so many enemy troops were allowed to escape when his units could have exploited their weaknesses. According to von Lux, the reconnaissance forces trained specifically for such opportunities, but instead found themselves idle as Allied soldiers fled. Despite propaganda claiming victory, he acknowledged this strategic misstep. Rommel's after-action report from Arras, preserved in the Bundesarchiv, details near-catastrophic events on May 21st, when British Matilda tanks breached his division's flank. Rommel personally directed anti-tank guns using 88mm flak guns to stabilize the situation. This incident significantly impacted German command, prompting concerns about what a coordinated counteroffensive might achieve if even 2 British battalions could cause such disruption. These worries contributed to subsequent cautious directives. Wehrmacht artillery observers recorded details of the evacuation through their rangefinders. Unit war diaries described scenes on the beaches resembling ant colonies in disarray, with long queues maintaining order under fire. The variety of vessels involved, from warships to pleasure craft, highlighted the British capacity for improvisation that German planners had not anticipated. Luftwaffe unit records offer insights into the challenges faced during the Dunkirk operation. For instance, Jagdgeschwader 26th War Diary describes the strain imposed by long-range sorties, where pilots had limited time over target before needing to return due to fuel constraints. Stuka squadrons suffered significant casualties when their fighter escorts left them unprotected. Reports from Luftflotte 2 and 3 suggest that unfavorable weather conditions were prevalent throughout most of the evacuation period. Smoke rising from burning oil tanks made targeting even more challenging. Kesselring's complaints to Göring about pilot fatigue went unanswered. Joachim Munchurg of JG-26 earned ace status during the Dunkirk operations, claiming several Spitfires. However, his combat reports highlighted the unexpected intensity of RAF resistance. British fighters appeared in greater numbers than anticipated based on intelligence estimates. On June 1st, the Luftwaffe's maximum effort sank a few ships, but arrived too late to make a significant impact. The majority of evacuations were completed successfully. Despite nearly 4,000 sorties flown, the Air Force failed to meet Göring's promises. Post-war interviews with German veterans consistently identified Dunkirk as a turning point in the war. Former Wehrmacht officers testifying before the U.S. Army's Historical Division described it as the moment when victory was lost. Several recipients of the Ritter Cruise, interviewed by Basil Liddell Hart, recalled being positioned near Burge where they could observe everything happening in Dunkirk. Their frustration at being held back remained evident years later. Military historians have extensively analyzed the entire operation. The German official history, Das Deutsche Reich und der Zweite Weltkrieg, identifies several factors contributing to the evacuation success: tank losses, stretched supply lines, Hitler's nervousness, and Göring's assurances. Modern analysis underscores that while Dunkirk was significant, it was not the sole factor in the evacuation success. French resistance, British determination, and German exhaustion all played crucial roles in shaping the outcome. The experience at Dunkirk fundamentally influenced German military doctrine, leading to a greater emphasis on coastal defense and anti-shipping capabilities. Despite arriving too late to alter the war's outcome, these lessons were learned. From 1941 through 1945, Wehrmacht staff analyzes frequently referenced Dunkirk as evidence of the peril inherent in an incomplete victory. The evacuation of defeated forces challenged traditional German ideas about decisive battles. When assessing the impact of Dunkirk on the entire French campaign, one must consider the human toll. German casualties numbered between 120,000 and 160,000 during the Battle of France, a relatively minor loss for such a sweeping victory, though it included substantial losses around Dunkirk. The evacuation figures are telling. British forces evacuated 338,226 soldiers. French and Belgian troops withdrew approximately 140,000. German prisoners captured at Dunkirk numbered about 40,000. Luftwaffe aircraft lost ranged from 156 to 240. Minimal equipment was seized by the Germans. These statistics highlight a peculiar victory with significant strategic consequences that would ultimately prove disastrous. The decision-making process remains one of military history's most scrutinized cases. Various factors played a role, including mechanical constraints, supply issues, command hesitancy, inter-service rivalry, and an incomplete understanding of enemy capabilities. Post-war German military education utilized Dunkirk as a case study, illustrating the dangers of leaving any aspect of victory uncompleted. Wehrmacht's analysis pointed to political interference exacerbating service rivalries and a failure to grasp Allied resolve, which collectively transformed what could have been a decisive triumph into a long-term strategic disadvantage. From the German viewpoint, Dunkirk epitomizes one of history's most paradoxical military outcomes, an overwhelming tactical success that harbored the seeds of strategic ruin. The Wehrmacht achieved nearly everything military strategists deemed possible within weeks, breaking through enemy lines, encircling Allied forces, and driving them to the coast. They shattered Allied armies, captured extensive territories, and stood on the brink of concluding the Western conflict. Yet at a critical juncture, due to command hesitation, inter-service rivalry, and an underestimation of their opponent's resilience, they permitted the core elements of future Allied victory to escape. The orders issued between May 24th and 26th, 1940, represent one of the most significant military decisions in modern history. If Panzer units had advanced further, if Guderian had been allowed to close off the escape route, and if the Luftwaffe had fulfilled its mission objectives, the course of World War II could have been drastically altered. Without its professional army, Britain might have been compelled to negotiate peace terms. The United States might never have become directly involved in European hostilities. The Soviet Union would likely have confronted Germany alone, potentially leading to catastrophic historical outcomes. Instead, Dunkirk emerged as a critical turning point where German expansion peaked and then began its decline. German soldiers who observed the evacuation witnessed a pivotal moment without fully understanding it. They saw rapid battlefield success but failed strategically, embodying what is known as a Pyrrhic victory. Accounts of this period in war diaries, official reports, and post-war testimonies offer invaluable insights into how military prowess can coexist with strategic short-sightedness. The Battle of Dunkirk showcased tactical brilliance while neglecting the political aspects of warfare. Although they won individual battles, the Germans ultimately lost the broader conflict, achieving operational success at the expense of ensuring their overall defeat. For German soldiers stationed around Dunkirk in late May and early June 1940, the future remained uncertain. They saw abandoned equipment, retreating enemies, and evidence of German military superiority. Yet, they could not predict that the swift victory they had achieved would be overshadowed by the Allied evacuation miracle. Soldiers boarding those diverse vessels would return 4 years later as liberators and conquerors. From a German perspective, Dunkirk encapsulates the intricate nature of military success and failure. It was both their greatest triumph and most significant blunder. It highlighted tactical superiority alongside strategic oversight. The beaches where German soldiers once stood watching Allied forces escape became symbols of missed opportunities and unfinished victories. At this juncture, the war's outcome began its gradual shift away from German dominance. Today, with the last living witnesses having passed on, we rely on their testimonies to understand that military events must be analyzed from various viewpoints. The German account of Dunkirk illustrates that victory without strategic acumen is meaningless and underscores how moral dimensions often transcend purely military considerations. Germany's tragedy at Dunkirk was not rooted in military failure, but rather in the absence of strategic foresight. By any traditional metric, their success was unquestionable. However, their downfall stemmed from an inability to grasp that wars are won not just through battlefield victories, but by breaking an opponent's resolve. At Dunkirk, they managed to destroy a significant amount of Allied equipment while simultaneously bolstering Britain's national spirit. The evacuation, watched in frustration by German soldiers, laid the groundwork for British resistance, nurtured the special alliance with America, and served as a launching pad for eventual liberation efforts. For Germany, Dunkirk marked both the pinnacle of military achievement and the start of an inevitable decline. Panzer commanders idling beside the AR Canal, Luftwaffe pilots unable to halt the evacuating ships, and infantrymen witnessing empty beaches all unwittingly contributed to one of history's pivotal turning points. They triumphed in every way except where it truly mattered, securing a swift end to the war before it devastated their nation and Europe. From the German viewpoint, Dunkirk was a masterpiece of military strategy that ultimately failed strategically. It was a victory that ensured defeat and a moment of glory that led to tragedy. The accounts of German participants remind us that Dunkirk wasn't merely a British salvation, but also a significant German loss. Beyond being an evacuation, it marked the vanishing of strategic opportunities that would never resurface. The Wehrmacht forces departing Dunkirk in June 1940 left behind more than abandoned equipment and empty beaches. They forfeited their best chance for a quick victory, limited war, and avoiding the ensuing catastrophe. These narratives preserved in archives and memories ensure that the German perspective on Dunkirk remains integral to our understanding. A cautionary tale about the limitations of military power and the risks associated with incomplete victories. Ultimately, the German experience at Dunkirk teaches us that military history is riddled with complexities, where victory and defeat are intricately intertwined. Command decisions have repercussions far beyond the battlefield. The German soldiers who witnessed the evacuation carved out a unique place in history. Victors who inadvertently enabled their own defeat, conquerors who facilitated their subjugation, and witnesses to the moment when tactical brilliance clashed with strategic short-sightedness. Their story deserves commemoration not to glorify Wehrmacht achievements or excuse Nazi aggression, but to grasp the multifaceted nature of one of history's most impactful military operations. The German perspective on Dunkirk underscores that every triumph harbors potential disaster, and military success without political acumen is ultimately futile. Understanding the past requires examining events through various perspectives. The beaches of Dunkirk, where once German soldiers stood in consternation watching their adversaries slip away, remain a testament to war's paradoxes. For Britain, they symbolize deliverance and resilience. For France, sacrifice and abandonment. And for Germany, they stand as enduring evidence of the victory that slipped through their fingers, the triumph that turned into tragedy, the moment when winning the battle meant losing the war.